This case is beyond strange. We're dealing with a ghost car, false identities, and a very real possibility that somewhere in America a secret society of some sort operates. On top of that, there are small things that don't add up, like the fact that nobody seems to remember exactly what Ethan was wearing the night he disappeared. We only know it was dark clothing and a baseball cap, but we don't know which clothing or which hat, or why the driver knew where he was going when Ethan hailed the cab from in front of the Marriott. Could he have been followed there? But if so, who would do such a thing? What did Ethan see? What did he know? Was this case really ever about him at all? In searching for answers, we went back to the beginning. We scoured news reports, watched hours of local news clips, and dove through the comments of articles written about this case. Most comment sections are filled with keyboard warriors making light of tragedies or claiming to have solved famous mysteries. But here, amid the usual cacophony, we found a user named Kevin, who offered up a little-known piece of history that changed our understanding of taxis in Portland. Turns out there was a robust black market taxi industry there. People driving unlicensed vehicles picking up fares without background checks. Taxis without meters, operating completely outside the law. They were hard to find, often booked through word of mouth. But if you were looking for one, the place to be was outside a Marriott hotel on the night of November 2014. At that point, the official taxi business had lost favor in Portland. Services like Uber were gaining traction. But not everyone was willing to get licensed or play by the new rules. If you wanted a cab and you didn't care about the consequences, you took whatever ride you could get. If you needed a cab that night and you wanted it quick, you took whatever ride you could get. If you were whoever was waiting for Ethan that night, you took whatever ride you could get. Maybe Mark Ellison had been driving for years, doing jobs others wouldn't. Maybe he saw the opportunity to make money slip away and lashed out. Or maybe this was something he'd planned for a long time. Either way, he had the perfect bait. The last piece of the puzzle was the shack. It sits 5 hours south of Portland. To reach it, you must hike down a steep path and cross a raging river. Even in summer, it's barely big enough for a small person, much less a fully grown man. And yet Mark allegedly stashed his car nearby, wrote that cryptic note, then forced his way inside. But why? We believe the shack may hold the truth. So we set out to find it. We reached out to the local newspaper and spent weeks corresponding with the reporter who had originally broken the story. They pointed us toward an outdoor guide service in the area. They in turn recommended a local expert with knowledge of the area. We contacted them, then waited. When we heard back, we arranged a meeting at the trailhead. Our guide agreed to take us to the shack for $300. If we found anything, he would split the reward with us. We were eager, but soon realized we were missing something crucial. Our guide handed over a thick wad of ropes. "You'll need these," he said, gesturing toward the steep path. "It's a lot steeper than it looks." We each tied a rope around our waist, securing the ends to our backpacks. Then we started down. Within minutes, we realized our guide was right. This was no ordinary hike. Soon, we were scrambling down rocks and fallen trees. The whole time, our guide kept a sharp lookout. "There are rattlesnakes around here," he explained, spotting a rock that looked suspiciously like a snake. "If you fall, you can hurt yourself badly. If you lose your footing, don't try to catch yourself. Use the ropes." We nodded, though we weren't sure we'd be able to follow instructions if we actually fell. Finally, we reached the bottom. Before us lay a shallow cave covered with dirt and sticks. With trembling hands, we moved the debris aside and entered. It was pitch black. We struggled to adjust to the darkness. Once our eyes adjusted, we saw what appeared to be an unfinished excavation leading deeper into the earth. Rocks were scattered around, along with fragments of concrete and spray paint cans. Someone had dug through the roof to install a ventilation pipe. They had planned to stay here for a while. The air was stale, stagnant, almost like it had been closed off for years. When we emerged from the cave, shaken but excited, we quickly checked the surrounding area. To our disappointment, we couldn't see any signs of the car mentioned in the news article. We tried to look around the perimeter, but the brush was too thick. We couldn't even find a path. Still, we could tell the shack had once been a lot bigger. Several wooden beams lay on the ground, along with a broken bed frame, suggesting someone had intended to live here comfortably. For a moment, we imagined Ethan waking up in the morning, realizing he'd been trapped overnight, then scrambling for the exit. As he pushed through the foliage, the driver spotted him, panic ensued, and Ethan made a mad dash for the hills. But there was no sign of a struggle, and besides, why would the driver leave the door unlocked? If he had locked it, Ethan could have easily stayed there for days. As we prepared to leave, our guide pointed toward the bed frame. "Here's what I don't understand," he said. "Why would someone build something this elaborate just to abandon it?" It was true. Why? We never found the car, but we returned home with more questions than before. Who were those mysterious passengers in the photographs? Why had Mark written that note? And most importantly, why had he abandoned his underground lair half built? We pored through the news stories again, desperately looking for clues. And then we remembered the voice recording. After a thorough listening and careful transcription, we had deciphered everything. The recording was roughly 10 minutes long. Most of it was indecipherable chatter, but the parts we did hear told a disturbing story. It revealed a tense interaction between Ethan and his driver, a slow escalation of anger and aggression. The driver repeatedly tried to steer the conversation toward Ethan's destination, but Ethan kept asking questions about himself, about the driver, about where he was going. The more he asked, the angrier the driver became. Finally, the driver snapped. "I'm gonna pull over and kick your ass," he snarled. Then came another muffled exchange. We couldn't make out the words, but it seemed to last a long time. And then silence. Silence followed by the distinct click of a seatbelt being unbuckled. "He asked too many questions," the driver said softly, as if explaining something to himself. "That's all." The rest of the recording was nothing but static. We still don't know exactly what happened in that car that night, but we believe it started just like any normal ride. Ethan sat in the back seat, politely engaging his driver in conversation. When they passed familiar landmarks, Ethan asked questions. Where he was going was a mystery, but the driver didn't seem to mind, at least at first. Then Ethan pressed on. It was an innocent question, but it was the last straw. The driver lost control and turned violent. He stopped the car, marched to the back seat, and confronted Ethan. The truth might have come out then. Whatever Ethan heard, whatever he discovered, it terrified him. But the driver silenced him permanently. That's why we never found blood or tissue in the car. He disposed of it properly. That's also why he carefully placed the body in the shack. He planned to retrieve it later. But what happened next? Why did he leave? Why did he write the note? What was the purpose of the recording? We think Mark Ellison was part of something much larger than himself. The photographs suggest a group of people traveling together, perhaps an organized crime ring. But if that's true, why were they taking pictures? Were they sharing their spoils? Or were they following orders? In today's world, the police would track the metadata embedded in a photograph. But this was 2014. Digital forensics wasn't considered. What we do know is this. The night Ethan disappeared was not the first time. A man matching Mark's description had been spotted in the vicinity of the Marriott that same week. Was he watching Ethan? Had he already struck once? And if so, where are the bodies? There is no evidence of any victims, no graves, no mass cuttings. Did Ethan stumble upon something he shouldn't have? Or was he merely collateral damage? The reason the shack was abandoned is unclear. Maybe it was in use by someone else. Maybe the operation was shut down. Maybe there was a falling out. Whoever Mark worked for probably had no interest in recovering the body. It was proof of a botch. They had no choice but to cover their tracks, hastily burying the truth under dirt and fallen leaves. The truth is, we may never know what really happened to Ethan Collins. The police have yet to link Mark to any other crimes. He has no criminal record. He lives alone, has no family, and seems to have evaporated off the face of the earth. The photos found in the shack remain unexplained. The numerous voice recordings offer more questions than answers. All we know is this. On the night of November 2014, a man named Ethan Collins called for a taxi outside the Marriott Hotel on 10th Avenue. He was never seen again.